We live in a world where most people crave one thing more than success, more than recognition, more than anything else: to be loved for who they truly are. But if you look closely, most relationships don't offer this. Instead, they offer conditional acceptance, approval when you meet expectations, rejection when you step outside them. This is why so many people feel unseen, unheard, and unloved, even while being surrounded by others. Today, I want to guide you through an educational journey into what it really means to be loved for who you are, and how you can create this reality in your life. Understanding conditional vs. Unconditional love. Most people think they're giving love, but in reality, they're giving approval. Approval is based on conditions. Behave a certain way, think a certain way, perform a certain role, and you'll be accepted. But the moment you deviate, love is withdrawn. Unconditional love, on the other hand, does not mean allowing abuse or sacrificing boundaries. It means embracing the truth of another person's essence without trying to reshape them into who we want them to be. To be loved for who you are, you must learn to recognize the difference between people who approve of you and people who truly love you. The role of authenticity in being loved. We can't expect people to love our true selves if we are not showing it to them. Most of us wear masks, polished versions of ourselves that conform to society's demands, but the cost of this is invisibility. When people love your mask, they aren't actually loving you. They're loving the persona you've created. Authenticity is scary because it risks rejection, yet it is the only pathway to genuine love. If you hide your true feelings, your quirks, your needs, you're trading the possibility of real love for the guarantee of superficial acceptance. Why we fear rejection more than we value love. The human nervous system is wired for survival. Long ago, being rejected meant expulsion from the tribe, which was equivalent to death. Today, that primal fear still lives in us. This is why so many people choose conformity over authenticity. But here is the paradox. The very thing we fear, rejection, is the only filter that can reveal who is truly capable of loving us. If someone rejects your authenticity, they are not rejecting you. They are revealing their incapacity to meet you where you truly exist. Rejection then becomes guidance, the mirror of relationships. Every relationship is a mirror reflecting back to us the way we treat ourselves. If you don't honor your truth, you'll attract partners and friends who also fail to honor it. If you criticize and suppress yourself, you'll magnetize relationships where others criticize and suppress you. To be loved for who you are, you must first become the kind of person who loves yourself for who you are. Relationships are not created by chance. They are vibrational matches to our inner relationship with ourselves. Building environments of radical acceptance. Being loved for who you are doesn't happen by accident. It requires conscious cultivation. Surround yourself with people, spaces, and communities that celebrate authenticity, even when it is messy. If you remain in environments where you must abandon parts of yourself to survive, you will never feel loved. Radical acceptance begins with choosing spaces where truth is safe to exist. And just as importantly, it requires you to extend that same radical acceptance to others. The more you allow others to be themselves, the more you normalize the vibration of unconditional love in your own life. The courage to demand real love. At some point, you must decide, is it worth living a life where you are only partially loved? The truth is, real love requires courage, courage to show your real self, courage to walk away from those who cannot love you at that level, courage to believe that you are worthy of love without distortion, without compromise, without conditions. When you align with this courage, you stop begging for scraps of approval and begin magnetizing people who can love your raw, authentic essence. To be loved for who you are is not just a desire, it is a birthright. But this birthright can only be claimed when you dare to live authentically, when you embrace rejection as a guide, when you create environments of acceptance, and when you summon the courage to demand nothing less than true love, most people grow up with the belief that they know what love is. We associate it with warmth, care, affection, and connection. But if you really stop to examine the kind of love that most people give and receive, you will discover something uncomfortable. It is not love at all, but conditional approval disguised as love. Conditional approval means I will accept you and stay close to you only if you fit into the image I hold of you, if you meet my standards, if you behave in a way that makes me comfortable, if you fulfill the role I want you to play, then I will call that love. The moment you fall short of those expectations, or the moment you express something that challenges the other person's comfort, you discover that the love quickly disappears. This is why so many people carry wounds of feeling unworthy or unseen, because they never really experienced love for who they truly are. Think about how children are raised in most households. A child who behaves, who gets good grades, who is polite, and who does what their parents want is often praised, hugged, and rewarded. But when that same child cries too much, expresses anger, struggles in school, or expresses a truth that is uncomfortable for the parent, suddenly that warmth is withheld. Sometimes the withdrawal of love is subtle, through cold silence or disappointment in the parent's eyes. Other times it is outright punishment or rejection. This is the blueprint most people grow up with. Love equals approval, and disapproval equals withdrawal of love. As adults, they unconsciously replicate this dynamic in friendships, romantic partnerships, and even workplaces. True love, however, is something entirely different. True love does not mean blind acceptance of everything someone does. It does not mean tolerating abuse or allowing harm. But it does mean being able to see and embrace the essence of another being beyond the conditions, beyond the roles, beyond whether or not they are comfortable to us in a given moment. It means allowing someone to exist as they are without the need to reshape them into what makes us feel safe. If you only extend warmth and connection when someone aligns with your ideal, what you are giving is not love. It is a transaction. It says, I will be connected to you as long as you serve me. This is why it is so important to recognize the difference between approval and love. If you believe that approval is love, you will spend your life chasing it. You will exhaust yourself trying to mold your identity into one that keeps you safe from rejection. You will mistake the acceptance of your mask for the acceptance of your soul. But when you begin to understand the difference, you gain clarity about who really loves you. You realize that people who only stand by you when you are convenient for them are not loving you at all. They are only approving of your performance. The people who stay, even when you are messy, imperfect, or difficult, are the ones who glimpse the truth of unconditional love. And here is the paradox. Until you can distinguish between these two experiences, you will continue to feel unloved even when surrounded by others. Because deep down, your being knows the truth. Approval may feel good temporarily, but it will never satisfy the human hunger to be loved for who you really are. If you desire to be loved for who you are, you must be willing to reveal who you are. This sounds obvious, but it is one of the greatest challenges for human beings. Most people live their lives behind carefully crafted masks. They have learned early on that to show their true thoughts, emotions, and desires is risky. It might lead to rejection, criticism, or abandonment. So they develop polished versions of themselves, personalities sculpted to gain approval and to minimize conflict. The problem is that while these masks protect you from rejection, they also prevent you from ever being truly loved. Because if people are responding to the mask, they are not actually responding to you. What they love is a character you are playing, not the essence of who you are. Authenticity is frightening precisely because it requires vulnerability. It is stepping into the risk that if you show your real self, your raw emotions, your unpolished truths, your quirks and imperfections, people may walk away. But the paradox is that this risk is the only gateway to real love. Imagine hiding the fullness of your being for an entire lifetime, just so you can secure the comfort of surface-level acceptance. At the end of that life, you will not only feel unseen, you will feel as though you never really existed in the relationships that mattered most, because in those relationships you were only half present, allowing only a curated fragment of yourself to be visible. When you choose authenticity, you begin to align with a different quality of connection. Instead of manipulating how people perceive you, you allow them to see you as you are. This might mean that some people will fall away, because they were never capable of meeting you at that depth. But what remains and what arrives in its place will be people who are drawn to the truth of you, not the performance. Authenticity acts like a filter. It separates superficial connections from genuine ones. The more authentic you become, the more you attract relationships that have the capacity to love you as you are, not as you pretend to be. It is important to remember that authenticity is not the same as recklessness or insensitivity. It doesn't mean throwing unprocessed emotions at others or demanding that everyone accept every behavior without question. It means being honest about what you feel, what you need, and what you value, while also remaining conscious of how your truth impacts others. When you live authentically, your inner world and your outer world come into alignment. There is no longer a war between who you are and who you present yourself to be. The cost of hiding is invisibility, and invisibility is a slow kind of death for the soul. But authenticity, though risky, is the only path that allows love to reach you fully. Because until you reveal yourself, you cannot be loved, you can only be approved of. And approval, no matter how abundant, will never nourish your heart the way genuine love does. The greatest reason people struggle to live authentically and to receive genuine love is fear of rejection. This fear is not random. It is hardwired into the very biology of human beings. Long ago, survival depended on belonging to a tribe. To be cast out was to face danger, loneliness, and almost certain death. Even though the world has changed and rejection no longer carries the same physical consequence, our nervous system has not caught up. Deep inside, the body reacts to rejection as if it were life, threatening. This is why even the smallest disapproval from others can feel unbearable, and why people bend themselves into shapes that are unnatural, simply to secure belonging. The truth, however, is that this fear of rejection keeps us imprisoned in false relationships. If your deepest motivation is to avoid being rejected, you will live as a performer, constantly scanning for what others want and adapting yourself to deliver it. You will silence your desires, soften your voice, and sacrifice your authenticity just to avoid that primal sting of being pushed away. Yet here lies the great irony. By trying so hard to avoid rejection, you also prevent yourself from ever being fully accepted. No one can truly embrace the parts of you they are never allowed to see. The paradox of rejection is that it is not your enemy, it is your filter. When you express your real thoughts, your true needs, your authentic self, some people will turn away. And while this can hurt deeply, it is not proof of your unworthiness. It is evidence of their limitation. They are not rejecting you. They are rejecting the discomfort of being confronted with a reality they cannot handle. They are rejecting their own inability to stretch into deeper love. To take rejection personally is to misunderstand its nature. It does not mean you are too much or not enough. It simply means that the other person does not have the capacity to meet you at your truth. When you see rejection through this lens, it transforms from something to fear into something to honor. Rejection reveals the spaces where you do not belong. It clarifies which relationships are safe containers for your authenticity and which are not. Without rejection, you would waste your life pouring energy into people who can never truly see or value you. Rejection saves you from that. It redirects you toward the relationships that are aligned, relationships where you can rest in the safety of being fully yourself. Learning to welcome rejection as a teacher requires courage. It asks you to sit with the sting, to breathe through the discomfort, and to recognize that your survival is no longer dependent on keeping everyone close. You are no longer that vulnerable tribe member facing death outside the firelight. You are a conscious being capable of creating new tribes made of those who resonate with your soul. And in this new awareness, rejection becomes not an end, but a doorway. It is the doorway through which real love enters, because only when false connections fall away can the true ones find their way to you. Every relationship you experience in your life is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. This may not be easy to accept, because it means that the pain, criticism, neglect, or rejection you feel from others often mirrors the way you already treat your own inner world. If you are harsh and judgmental toward yourself, you will naturally attract people who echo that harshness. If you dismiss your needs, silence your emotions, and betray your truth, you will find yourself surrounded by relationships where others do the very same. On the other hand, when you begin to honor your feelings, embrace your flaws, and create inner safety for your authentic self, you will draw in relationships that provide respect, acceptance, and care. This is the universal law of reflection. The outer mirrors the inner. It is common to look at failed relationships and conclude that the problem is entirely with the other person. While it is true that others carry their own wounds and limitations, the deeper truth is that you can only attract into your life what resonates with your current inner reality. If you hold beliefs such as "I am unworthy," "I am too much," or "my needs are a burden," you will unconsciously seek out people who confirm these beliefs. This doesn't mean you are to blame for mistreatment, but it does mean that healing your inner world is the most powerful step toward transforming your outer relationships. Consider how this plays out in practice. If you criticize yourself relentlessly, you are likely to tolerate partners or friends who also criticize you because it feels familiar. If you constantly suppress your anger, you may draw on people who trample your boundaries because you have trained yourself not to defend them. The reverse is also true. When you begin to genuinely value yourself, you stop settling for connections that devalue you. When you allow yourself to feel your emotions and express them, you begin to magnetize relationships where those emotions are respected and held with care. This mirror dynamic is not meant to punish you. It is meant to guide you. Every painful interaction can be used as feedback, showing you where you are still disconnected from yourself. When someone disrespects you, ask, "Where am I still disrespecting myself?" When someone ignores your feelings, ask, "Where am I ignoring my own inner truth?" These questions are not about self-blame, but about reclaiming power. They shift the focus from trying to control others to cultivating self-alignment, which is the only thing you truly have power over. When you commit to building a healthy, compassionate relationship with yourself, your external relationships inevitably begin to change. Some old connections may fall away, not because you are unworthy, but because they no longer resonate with your higher level of self-regard. And new connections will emerge, relationships that reflect the acceptance, kindness, and authenticity you are now practicing within. The mirror of relationships never lies. If you want to know how you treat yourself, look at the relationships around you. And if you want to change those relationships, the starting point will always be your own inner world. The more you choose self-love over self-rejection, the more your outer world will align to match it, until love for who you truly are becomes not the exception, but the natural standard of your life. Being loved for who you are is not something that happens by chance. It requires the conscious choice to create and step into environments where authenticity is safe, where truth is welcomed, and where love is not based on performance. Most people remain in relationships, families, or communities where they must fragment themselves to belong. They learn to hide their real emotions, suppress their needs, or play roles that keep others comfortable. While this may maintain surface harmony, it erodes the soul. You cannot feel genuinely loved in a place where parts of you must be denied in order to stay connected. To experience real love, you must first recognize when you are in environments of conditional acceptance. These are places where vulnerability is met with judgment, where honesty is punished with withdrawal, or where individuality is treated as a threat. Many people tolerate these environments because they fear being alone, but the cost is that they abandon themselves. Every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, you are teaching yourself that your authenticity is dangerous. Over time, this creates an inner prison where even when surrounded by others, you feel profoundly alone. Radical acceptance begins with the courage to choose differently. It means consciously seeking out people and spaces where your truth is safe to exist. This may look like surrounding yourself with friends who celebrate your quirks instead of criticizing them, or joining communities that encourage vulnerability instead of shaming it. It may mean creating boundaries with family members who cannot accept your authentic self, and sometimes it means walking away entirely from environments that demand self-betrayal. Though this process can be painful, it is essential, because only when you are in a safe container can the real you breathe and expand. Just as important as choosing the right environments is learning to extend the same radical acceptance to others. It is impossible to demand unconditional love while offering only conditional acceptance yourself. If you want to be loved in your raw truth, you must also learn to hold space for the raw truths of others, even when they are uncomfortable or inconvenient. This does not mean tolerating abuse or abandoning your boundaries. It means recognizing the humanity in others, allowing them to be in process, and resisting the urge to mold them into who you think they should be. The vibration you hold toward others is the vibration you invite into your own life. The environments you choose shape your ability to receive love. When you remain in places that require self-denial, you will never feel seen. But when you courageously surround yourself with acceptance and practice offering it to others, you create a magnetic field where authenticity is normalized. In that field, love ceases to be a fragile transaction and becomes something deeper, a sanctuary where both you and others can exist without masks. And in that sanctuary, you discover what it truly feels like to be loved for who you are. At some point in your life, you will be faced with a choice that will determine the quality of every relationship you experience. Will you continue to settle for partial love, or will you demand the real thing? Most people never consciously make this decision. They drift along in relationships where they are only conditionally accepted, convincing themselves that a little bit of approval is better than nothing. They tolerate being seen only in fragments, all the while yearning silently for someone to embrace them in their entirety. But the truth is, settling for half. Love is the same as starving yourself while pretending to be fed. It keeps you alive on the surface, but empties you from within. To step into the reality of being truly loved, courage is required. Courage to show yourself fully without hiding behind masks. Courage to speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. Courage to risk rejection by revealing your authentic needs, desires, and vulnerabilities. Real love cannot find you if you remain hidden. It can only recognize you when you are willing to be seen. That kind of visibility feels terrifying at first because it strips away your safety nets. Yet, it is the only doorway through which genuine love can enter. Courage is also required to walk away from relationships that cannot meet you at that level of truth. This may be the hardest part, because the human heart clings to familiarity even when it is painful. You may feel loyalty to people who have known you for years, or fear being alone if you let go. But if those connections require you to shrink, silence, or betray yourself, staying is a form of self-abandonment. When you choose to walk away, you are not rejecting others. You are honoring your own soul's need for real love. By closing the door on relationships built on conditions, you create space for relationships built on truth to arrive. Demanding real love is not about arrogance or entitlement. It is about aligning with the truth that you are inherently worthy of being seen and valued as you are. This demand is not voiced to others as a threat, but embodied in your way of being. When you live authentically, when you refuse to settle for roles or masks, you naturally emit the signal that only genuine love is welcome in your life. The people who cannot meet that signal will fall away, and the ones who can will be drawn to you like a magnet. The courage to demand real love transforms your entire existence. It shifts you from chasing scraps of validation to receiving the fullness of connection. It allows you to experience the kind of relationships that feel like home, the kind where you can exhale, drop the performance, and be wholly yourself. In the end, this courage is not just about relationships with others. It is about your relationship with life itself. Because when you decide you will accept nothing less than true love, you begin to live in alignment with the deepest truth of who you are. And that alignment is what finally makes the experience of being loved for who you are not just possible, but inevitable. To be loved for who you truly are is not a luxury, it is a necessity for the soul. Every human being longs for it, yet so many settle for its counterfeit approval, performance-based connection, conditional acceptance. The truth we've explored is that love cannot reach you if you are hiding behind masks, if you are shrinking yourself to avoid rejection, or if you remain in environments that punish you. Authenticity. Love only becomes real when you risk being seen, when you allow rejection to filter out the false, when you honor the reflections your relationships show you, and when you summon the courage to demand nothing less than authenticity in return. You are not meant to spend your life starving on scraps of conditional affection. You are meant to experience the nourishment of relationships that feel like sanctuary connections where your truth is safe, your flaws are embraced, and your essence is celebrated. But this begins with you. The more you accept yourself, the more you align your inner world with authenticity, the more your external relationships will mirror that alignment. And when you courageously walk away from half love, you open the door to whole love. The path is not easy. It will require you to let go of old identities, old bonds, and old fears. It will ask you to confront the pain of rejection and the loneliness of transition. But on the other side of that courage is freedom. The freedom of living without masks. The freedom of knowing you are loved not for what you give or what you perform, but simply for who you are. So the invitation is clear. Stop negotiating with your worth. Stop asking for approval and start aligning with love. Choose environments that honor your truth. Be the mirror of acceptance you long to see, and above all, refuse to settle for anything less than love that sees you fully. Because the moment you live as your authentic self, you will discover that the kind of love you've been longing for is not just possible, it is waiting.